This is the Hype Squad with Charli McConnell, a podcast where women can be full of themselves and brag about what they're good at. Each week, we're going to bring you conversations covering topics like motherhood, life, relationships, business, and everything in between, because anything is possible with your very own Hype Squad. What's up, ladies? Welcome back to the Hype Squad. I'm so happy you're here. Today is another solo episode, and today I'm going to talk more about solo trips and how important they are. So first off, I want to tell you kind of how I started doing solo trips and where it came from. So I'm sure you've heard me say this multiple times in other episodes, but my husband has always traveled a lot for work. You'll hear me talk about him being gone or not being here for something. And him traveling as much as he did, most of the time he was by himself traveling for work. And in the beginning of our relationship, before we had Sailor, I was resentful of, you get to go to all these places and you get to have alone time and you get to go to all these restaurants. Oh my God, the food was probably one of the biggest parts of it. And then after we had Sailor, it got even more resentful in that I am here with this child all the time and you get to leave and go away and, not have to wake up in the middle of the night, so on and so forth, right? Resentful is the best way to put it. And one of the things that he said to me um, around that time, after we had Sailor, was, who's stopping you from going on trips, right? Who is stopping you from going on solo trips? And it kind of clicked for me. Nobody's stopping me. Like, nobody's telling me I can't go. The problem was, at that time, I was staying home. I was a stay-at-home mom, and I felt like I needed an excuse. I needed a work trip, or how dare I go on this trip all by myself for no real particular reason. And it felt not doable, right? For him, he had an excuse. It was work. He had to go, right? I didn't have anything that I had to go, that I had to be away from her or anything like that. And so it just felt a lot harder to come to terms with that. And so fast forward, we started doing the check-in, which you may or may not have heard me talk about that. It's definitely on my website, and I'll put details for it in the show notes. But the check-in was our relationship check-in that we started doing several years ago, and now I teach it in workshops and with my clients. But part of the check-in is to schedule alone time each weekend. So it could be an hour on a Saturday or a Sunday where you either get to sleep in or you get to go work out or you get to go read a book in a quiet room, whatever. Maybe it's longer, maybe it's not, but it's alone time to some extent, whether you're working on your hobbies, finding a hobby. Like, who really knows what their hobbies are? I don't have any hobbies. At least not yet. And so we had started doing this alone time thing where he would go, the first things that he would do for his alone time when we first started doing this is he bought a mountain bike and he would go biking a couple of hours. He's not a golfer. He doesn't play video games. He doesn't hunt. And so it was really hard for him to find his own hobbies, right? It's not just me. And so he started mountain biking. And that was kind of like his built-in alone time. So I had to be really proactive to get my alone time. And right off the bat, it was just working out. I want to go to the gym on a Saturday where I don't have to worry about scheduling a sitter, right? Or I want to go for a really long walk and listen to a podcast, or I want to sit and veg movie. It was very based at home. And he encouraged me to step out of that comfort zone and start going out of town. So I went to Atlanta multiple times. I would meet up with some girlfriends who lived there one night in particular. And I share this story all the time because it was the best. The first time I ever went to Atlanta, I got a hotel room. I was so uncomfortable being by myself that I didn't want to leave the hotel room. So I ordered in food to be delivered. I vegged out. I laid in the bed. I took a bath. I hardly came out of the room. And then later that night, I wanted dessert and room service didn't have any dessert. And I thought, shit, how am I going to get it? I don't want to leave this room, right? So I called Colby, and I'm downtown Atlanta. I'm not a city girl. So the idea of going out into a, bustling city in the middle of the night did not feel in my comfort zone. So there was this bakery right down the street. I can't remember the name of it, but I FaceTimed Colby and I said, I looked it up on the map. It's this far. Like, just stay on FaceTime with me so I feel safer, right? Like, what's he going to do on FaceTime? But for some reason, that made me feel safer. And I put my shoes on and my jacket and I went outside and I walked to this bakery and I went up to the counter and I asked the girl, I said, what are your three favorite cakes? And she told me. And side note, this was before I quit eating dairy. So, like, I went ham on these cakes. So, I got a piece of each. So, three huge pieces of cake. Went back on FaceTime with Colby, like all the way to the door of my hotel room, and then got off the phone and sat in bed and ate three whole pieces of cake. And I don't mean like they were like huge, huge pieces of cake, and watched The Real Housewives and went to sleep and slept in with no child or no baby monitor or no dog, like none of that, right? And that was the first time. And then the next couple of times I would go and I would arrange dinner or drinks with friends of mine that live in Atlanta and I would make it like a social thing. And so I did that several times and each time it got easier and it was so much fun. And then I had heard about this wellness retreat called Miraval. I'll tag their website in the show notes. I'd heard a friend talk about it. I can't remember exactly how, who, or, how it came up, but I remember mentioning to Colby I really wanted to go. He and I should go. So fast forward, God love my husband. Like, he really is incredible and such a great supporter of mine. And he bought me tickets to Miraval as a surprise, as a Christmas present. He actually bought them on like Black Friday. They had a great deal. And he gave me the tickets for Christmas, I think it was. And he said the only caveat or rule is that you have to go by yourself. If you're only listening to this, you can't see my face. Like, my eyes blew up the size of like golf balls and I looked like a deer in the headlights. And I was just, no, no, I can't. No, 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 no. I'm not going to an airport and getting on a plane. I'm getting on a shuttle bus and checking into a hotel and then staying in a hotel. Like, went through this whole list of what the trip would be like. I'm not doing that by myself. I'm going to have to go eat meals by myself. I can't hide in a hotel room at this place. So I think when he gave it to me, I had like 2 or 3 months before I left. And so I really had time to like come to terms with it. I'm going to do this. I set really, really good intentions of what this trip was going to be like for me. And I remember one of the things that I set an intention for was that I was not going to make friends. I did not want to be social. I wanted to make this a very internal trip where I had a lot of self reflection and journaling and meditating and reading. Like, I wanted to spend a lot of alone time because that is something that is already so uncomfortable for me. I wanted to really maximize this alone time. So I also left my phone in my room the entire time. I was friendly, right? Like, I wasn't like going into it in full bitch mode, like, don't talk to me, I can't be your friend type of thing. But I wasn't like overly people pleasing or like, being a pushover, not a pushover. That's probably not the right way to put it, but I was holding my boundaries, if that makes sense. And, but I met this one lovely, lovely woman who was there at the same time. And this is one thing I always say, like, I feel like my energy pulls people to me in some respects, meaning I'm a good listener. I have pretty welcoming energy. And my husband says I have this gift of like people just coming to me and telling me their life story and feeling really comfortable with me, which is why I'm a good coach, right? And I was trying really hard to turn that off. And this lovely woman came up to me and started pouring into me some of her own struggles. And I felt this like moment of, okay, I have an option here. I can turn her away in a non confrontational way, which, by the way, I don't know how to do that. Like, I'm not confrontational, but I also don't really know how to say no to people. Or I can practice letting this energy move through me and not holding on to it. And that's ultimately what I decided to do. And it only lasted a day. I feel like she must have read my energy kind of shifting for her. But I did. I let her pour into me. I took it, but then I let it pass right through me. And I think it was a great tool that I learned that's now really useful for me in coaching, that I didn't invest in her too much. I let her use me, but not in a negative way. She needed someone to talk to. She needed someone to vent to. And so I gave myself to her for that, but I didn't absorb or let any of it like weigh on me. I will say though, at the time, it was a little disappointing. Like this is going to change my experience, but it didn't. I think that it just it made the experience bigger, right? Like you can make plans, and then what's the saying? God laughs when you make plans. Um, I still feel like that was necessary for me on that journey. But I ate my dinners by myself. I didn't take my phone. I had this one rule where I didn't take a book or my phone, anything to like keep me busy at dinner. I literally would sit there and eat and look around the room, which for someone who's not really great on their own, that's really hard and scary. And maybe some of you are listening to this thinking, I could never do that. And there were a million times in my life I would have said the same thing. But being pushed into this, challenged into this opportunity by my husband, I thought, let me take full like advantage of this. So I did some really cool things at Miraval. Um I did a past life regression, which is probably a whole nother podcast to talk about. I did this clairvoyant experience, which was also wild. A crystals class. I walked from like this log suspended super high in the air. I have no idea how high, but that was crazy. And I went on long hikes and I read several books, and I got like, they had a gong there. So you could like go and hit the gong and have these meditation moments. And I can't wait to go back, really. And I can't imagine going back not being by myself, but maybe I will, maybe I won't. My reason in sharing this story is that, and there have been lots of other trips that I've taken now by myself. And I feel like it was such a pivotal moment for me to start doing this, because I really had to get to know myself better. I really had to get comfortable being alone and counting on myself. And, you know, some people get the opportunity through work or, something along those lines. Maybe you're an only child, or you've lived on your own. Like I've never lived on my own. I've never lived in a house by myself. I lived with my parents, and then I lived with my husband. And, I never had that experience of living on my own. My husband travels a lot, so I do get a lot of alone time, but that didn't feel the same. So I wanted to share this story because I feel like it's a really good reminder that growth, change, learning more about yourself is on the other side of something really uncomfortable. And if you don't explore that or challenge yourself, push yourself into that uncomfortable space, you're never really going to grow. And it is scary. It is so scary. I will not take anything away from that. But on the other side of that fear is change, growth, exploration, learning yourself. Like there's just so much on the other side of that fear that if you can just take that step and jump off that cliff, so to speak, I don't think you'll ever regret it. I think in my experience and the women that I support and the people in my life who I've seen take chances and take risk have never been disappointed or never regretted doing it. So I wanted to share that story in this little podcast today to encourage you to take a chance, take a risk, whether it's traveling on your own, doing something on your own, just take a risk. That looks different for everybody. But I do think that the change that you are probably wanting to see in your life is on the other side of that risk. So it's the hype squad. So I'm going to do my hype list, accomplishment, and something that I've overcome. So, I mean, going back to what I was saying today, my accomplishment is that I am happy alone. Like I can do things alone. I can go on trips. I can do things on my own and really enjoy them. And the thing that I overcame to get to there is just stepping over that fear, challenging myself, even though I was challenged originally by my husband, kind of stepping up to the plate and accepting that challenge to go out and do that scary thing, which was do a trip by myself. It was a huge obstacle for me and one that I almost backed out of. So, um, I hope that hearing this story motivates you to take a chance for something that you've been wanting to do or to take the trip on your own, whatever it may be. I hope that something about today's podcast inspired you. I am so grateful that you are here and that you're a part of this community and listening to this podcast in the first place. If you're ever interested in coaching or learning more about the support that I offer, please reach out. We can always jump on a free 30-minute call just to get to know each other and see if coaching is right for you. So I am grateful for you and thank you for spending some time with me today and getting hyped. Thanks for getting hyped with me. So I hope that today and every day you are kind to yourself.